There comes a time when silence becomes strength, when stepping back isn't weakness, it's wisdom. We live in a world that often tells us to stay strong, to be the bigger person, or to just forgive and move on. But here's the truth. Strength isn't always about enduring pain. Sometimes it's about knowing when enough is enough. You never have to apologize for walking away from these 6 behaviors. Not now, not ever. When you are consistently met with disregard, dismissal, and devaluation, it's not just an oversight, it's a pattern, and patterns tell you everything you need to know. Chronic disrespect is not a flaw to overlook or a quirk to excuse. It is a red flag waving loud and clear. Disrespect doesn't always show up in dramatic confrontations or raised voices. Often it's the subtle jabs, the condescending tones, the repeated interruptions, the decisions made without your input, and the way someone treats your time, your feelings, and your presence as optional. When someone makes it a habit to minimize your value, they're showing you how little they truly regard you, regardless of what their words may claim. Many people are conditioned to tolerate disrespect under the illusion of keeping peace. They tell themselves, maybe it was just a bad day, or they didn't mean it like that, or it's not that big of a deal. But when these moments pile up, when the sighs, the eye rolls, the sarcasm, the dismissals become part of your daily atmosphere, you begin to internalize the disrespect, you start to shrink, you question your own worth. And in the name of not making a fuss, you begin to betray your own boundaries. Chronic disrespect is not something that corrects itself. If anything, it grows. The more you tolerate it, the more permission the other person feels they have to continue. Sometimes disrespect is hidden behind a smile. It's cloaked in fake praise or masked with humor. It can even be disguised as constructive criticism that only seems to tear you down. And if you're not careful, you may start thinking you're too sensitive or that your discomfort is an overreaction. But your feelings are not wrong. They're the warning signs. When someone consistently fails to treat you with dignity, it's not your job to analyze their intentions. It's your responsibility to respond to their impact. You are not obligated to sit in rooms where your voice is overlooked or your presence is barely acknowledged. You are not difficult for wanting basic decency. You are not dramatic for expecting consistent respect. Disrespect does not just damage your confidence, it damages your spirit. It conditions you to accept less. It makes you doubt your instincts and your standards. It chips away at the foundation of trust in any relationship, whether personal or professional. And what's worse, if you stay long enough, you start disrespecting yourself by association. You justify their actions while silencing your own truth. You begin to believe that maybe this is just how things are, that maybe you're asking for too much, that maybe you just have to be stronger. But strength is not tolerating mistreatment. Strength is knowing when enough is enough. You don't need to argue your worth to be treated with respect. It is not earned by jumping through hoops or proving your loyalty. Respect should be the baseline, not a reward for your silence. When someone repeatedly disregards your boundaries, they are showing you that your comfort is not their concern. When they continue to belittle your ideas or speak over you, they are making it clear that your contributions don't matter to them. When they mock you, especially in front of others, or offer backhanded compliments that leave you feeling small, they are not joking. They are revealing a deeper truth about how they view you. It takes courage to walk away from chronic disrespect, especially when it's coming from people you love, work with, or feel obligated to please. But every time you excuse it, you reinforce it. Every time you downplay it, you lose a piece of yourself. You cannot thrive in an environment where you're constantly fighting for validation. You cannot grow around people who see you as less. You owe it to yourself to recognize the red flag and act on it. Your peace matters. Your self-worth matters. Your boundaries matter. You don't need to explain why you walked away. You just need to remember that you were never wrong for doing so. Emotional manipulation is not love, and it never will be. It may dress itself in the language of concern, wear the face of affection, and speak in tones that mimic care, but underneath, it seeks control, not connection. Manipulation distorts reality. It twists your words, rewrites your memories, and reshapes your emotions so that you begin to doubt yourself while depending more and more on the manipulator for truth, for clarity, and even for your own sense of worth. Real love never makes you feel smaller. Real love doesn't confuse you, shame you, or keep you in a constant state of walking on eggshells. When love becomes a weapon used to get compliance, it stops being love and becomes emotional abuse. Manipulation often begins subtly. It can look like someone constantly needing to be the victim, even when they've hurt you. It can sound like, if you really loved me, you'd do this, or I guess I just don't matter to you. Over time, those phrases chip away at your boundaries. You find yourself doing things out of guilt rather than choice. You start agreeing just to avoid conflict, and eventually you lose sight of where your needs end and their demands begin. They begin to control not only your actions, but your emotions, how you feel about yourself, what you believe you're allowed to want, and how much you're willing to endure. This type of manipulation thrives in silence. It grows in spaces where you're too afraid to speak your truth, where your discomfort is dismissed, and where every disagreement is flipped to make you the problem. You start to internalize their accusations. You question whether you are in fact too sensitive, too dramatic, too selfish. But what you're really feeling is the erosion of your identity. You're slowly losing the ability to trust your own voice, and that is not love. It is control masked as concern.
Another hallmark of emotional manipulation is gaslighting. That's when someone deliberately makes you doubt your memory, your feelings, or even your sanity. They'll say that never happened, or you're imagining things, when you know what you experienced was real. And the more they deny it, the more confused you become. Eventually, you may even start apologizing for things you didn't do just to keep the peace. You'll find yourself isolated both emotionally and sometimes physically, because manipulators often try to separate you from anyone who might reinforce your reality. Love doesn't isolate. It doesn't make you feel like a burden for expressing your needs. Love listens. Love respects. Love allows space for two people to grow, not just one person to dominate. When you're constantly walking around someone else's moods, tailoring your actions to avoid their anger, fear, or withdrawal, you're not in love. You're in survival. True love doesn't require you to disappear. It invites you to be seen. Manipulators often play the long game. They might shower you with affection, praise, and attention until you start noticing the control beneath the surface. And when you do, and you try to speak up, they switch tactics. They might cry. They might beg. They might promise to change. But change without accountability is manipulation in disguise. If someone refuses to acknowledge how they've made you feel, if they deflect, blame, or twist the narrative every time you raise a concern, then they are not interested in love. They are interested in power. It's difficult to walk away from emotional manipulation, especially when the manipulator has made themselves the center of your world. But you are allowed to leave relationships that hurt, even if they once felt good. You're allowed to choose clarity over confusion. You're allowed to choose peace over chaos. You don't owe loyalty to someone who thrives on your guilt. You are not cold, heartless, or selfish for removing yourself from manipulation. You are wise, you are healing, and most of all, you are remembering what love is supposed to feel like: free, honest, safe, and mutual. Love is not manipulation, and manipulation is not love. Let that truth settle deep and let it guide you forward. One-sided relationships drain the soul because they slowly convince you that love is supposed to be lopsided, that effort should come from only one direction, that your role is to give and theirs is to take. At first, it may not seem obvious. You pour into them because you care, because that's who you are. You show up when they call. You listen when they speak. You support them through their storms. But over time, you start to notice something's missing. Their presence when you need it. Their effort when it matters most. Their attention when you're falling apart. You begin to feel like a backup plan, an emotional crutch, a convenience rather than a priority. In one-sided relationships, the imbalance doesn't just live in action, it lives in energy. You start to feel tired, emotionally depleted, and mentally exhausted, not because you're doing too much, but because you're doing it alone. You carry the weight of the connection, the planning, the forgiveness, the patience. You initiate the conversations. You remember the details. You make the apologies, even for things that aren't your fault. And still they remain distant, distracted, or inconsistent. You begin to question whether you're asking for too much when all you really want is something mutual, reciprocation, not perfection. The dangerous part about one-sided relationships is that they often trap you in the cycle of proving your worth. You start to believe that if you just give more, love harder, stay longer, they'll eventually match your effort. You convince yourself that loyalty will earn you appreciation, but love that has to be earned through sacrifice isn't love, it's a transaction, and it's one that leaves you emotionally bankrupt. Every time you overextend yourself to someone who refuses to meet you halfway, you abandon a piece of your own value. You tell yourself it's okay, that maybe they're just going through something, that maybe they'll change, but weeks turn to months, and months to years, and all you have is the hope of what it could be, not the truth of what it is. One-sided relationships aren't always romantic. They can exist in friendships, family dynamics, even professional environments. Any relationship where you feel unseen, unheard, and unappreciated is draining. It wears down your confidence. It makes you second-guess your intuition. It leads you to believe that the problem must be you, your standards, your needs, your expectations. But needing mutual care, respect, and communication isn't being needy. It's being human. You deserve to be poured into, not just tolerated. You deserve to be remembered, not just relied on. You deserve to feel like you matter, not just when it's convenient for someone else. The truth is, people make time for what matters. They show up for who they value. And while life gets busy and seasons change, consistency doesn't mean constant. It means intentional. If someone can go days, weeks, or months without checking in, without contributing, without acknowledging your effort, then they are choosing their absence. And you have every right to choose your peace over their silence. The more you chase after someone who won't meet you halfway, the further you drift from your own center. You begin to orbit around someone else's life while losing touch with your own. Leaving a one-sided relationship can feel like failure, especially if you've invested deeply. But staying in it is a slow erosion of your spirit. You can love someone and still recognize they are not capable or willing to love you in return. You can forgive someone and still decide that your well-being matters more than their potential. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you finally decided to care for yourself too. You are not hard to love. You are not too much. You are simply asking for what is fair, for what is balanced, for what is true. And if someone can't give that, the most loving thing you can do is give it to yourself. Consistency speaks louder than apologies because anyone can say sorry, but not everyone can prove it through change. Words are easy. They can be whispered through tears, typed in a message, or thrown out in the middle of an argument to ease tension. But if they're not followed by action, real, observable, long-term action, they lose their meaning. A true apology is not in what's spoken, but in what's done afterward. It's in the changed behavior, the new awareness, the refusal to repeat what caused harm. If someone continues to hurt you the same way, over and over, and always covers it with a sorry, what they're showing you is that your pain is tolerable to them. Their comfort matters more than your healing. And no matter how sincere they sound in the moment, inconsistency reveals their true intentions. There are people who become experts in apologies. They know exactly what to say, how to sound remorseful, how to trigger your empathy so that you stay. They use sorry as a reset button, a way to keep the relationship going without ever having to confront their behavior. And because you care, because you hope for the best in them, you accept those apologies. You forgive. You give chances. You justify the past in the name of potential, but slowly something inside you changes. You stop feeling safe. You stop feeling seen, and you begin to realize that this is not growth. It's a loop, a pattern, an emotional cycle dressed up as reconciliation. Consistency is how people show you who they really are. It's not in the flowers they bring after the fight or the promises they make when you're upset. It's in whether or not they take accountability without being forced to. It's in how they act when they know you're not watching. It's in the way they treat you when there's no tension, no conflict, just space to be kind. Someone who truly values you doesn't wait for things to go wrong to prove they care. They show it every day in their effort, their presence, their attentiveness. They don't just talk about change, they live it. The painful part is that many people get caught between what someone says and what they actually do. You remember their good moments, their best intentions, their potential. You want to believe that this time is different, that the apology came from a genuine place, and maybe it did. But sincerity is not enough without consistency. Being sorry once means little when the same hurt repeats again and again. Real love doesn't operate like that. Real love pays attention, adapts, and honors the lessons that pain has taught. It's not about perfection. Everyone makes mistakes. People mess up, react poorly, or say things they regret, but someone who truly cares won't keep making the same mistakes without reflection. They won't hurt you with the same words, the same silence, the same absence. They won't put you in a position where your forgiveness is taken for granted. When someone values you, they work to protect you from the things they once did to break you. They don't wait for you to get exhausted. They don't make you beg for change. They initiate it, sustain it, and make it part of who they are, not just something they pretend to be when it's convenient. Consistency brings peace. It builds trust. It creates a foundation where love doesn't feel like survival, where you don't have to constantly monitor moods, question intentions, or prepare for disappointment. Consistency says, you can count on me, not just today, but tomorrow, not just when I feel guilty, but because I respect you. That kind of love doesn't confuse you. It doesn't give you hope one day and silence the next. It doesn't make you doubt yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. You don't need perfect people around you. You need honest people who show up again and again, who do what they say they will, who take their mistakes seriously and take your heart even more seriously. If someone's actions don't align with their apologies, believe the actions, because consistency speaks louder than any sorry ever could. Peace is more valuable than popularity, because what so many chase in the spotlight often comes at the cost of inner stillness. The desire to be liked, followed, and validated by the world can become an addiction, one that drains your soul while inflating your ego. Popularity is loud. It demands your performance. It requires you to keep showing up, smiling on cue, and staying relevant in a world that forgets people quickly. But peace is quiet. Peace doesn't require applause. It asks nothing but truth. It doesn't care how many people know your name or agree with your choices. It only cares whether you can sleep at night knowing you stayed true to yourself. Chasing popularity can be exhausting because it places your self-worth in the hands of others. You start measuring your value by how many people clap for you, follow you, praise you, or invite you in. And the moment the applause fades, even slightly, you feel the insecurity creeping in. You begin to adjust who you are to stay in favor. You trade authenticity for acceptance. You silence your truth for likes. You shape-shift to stay included. But in that process, you lose the one thing you need most, peace of mind. True peace doesn't come from external validation. It comes from alignment, when your values, actions, and heart are all pointed in the same direction. You can have thousands of admirers and still feel alone. You can be surrounded by people and still feel empty. That's because peace isn't about how full the room is. It's about how full your spirit feels. When you pursue peace over popularity, you no longer have to fear rejection. You're no longer enslaved to perception. You start choosing what's right over what looks good. You speak with intention, not to impress, but to express. You stop performing and start living. The truth is, not everyone is meant to understand or applaud your journey. And the moment you accept that, you free yourself from the prison of people-pleasing. Popularity fades, opinions change, crowds shift, but peace remains. It remains when the noise dies down. It remains when you're misunderstood. It remains when you walk away from spaces that once held your identity. It's not glamorous, it's not viral, but it is solid. And in a world full of shifting standards, that solidity becomes priceless. Sometimes choosing peace means letting go of the need to defend yourself. It means staying quiet when you're falsely accused. It means refusing to entertain drama, even if it costs you connections. It means exiting rooms where your presence depends on your silence. It means trusting that your character will speak for you when others try to speak against you. Popularity invites you into every conversation. Peace reminds you not every conversation deserves your presence. There is power in choosing peace.
It means you no longer need to be the loudest voice in the room to feel heard. You no longer need to win the argument to feel strong. You don't need to be seen to be significant. You carry a calm confidence that radiates without effort. You set boundaries not to push people away, but to protect your energy. You walk away from what disturbs your spirit, even when it makes others uncomfortable. Because your well-being is no longer up for negotiation, and while popularity often thrives in moments, peace builds a legacy. A person with peace is deeply rooted. They're not easily shaken. They don't chase chaos or crowd please to feel whole. They are intentional with their words, careful with their time, and deliberate with their relationships. They don't need everyone's approval. They just need alignment with their soul. And when you live like that, you begin to attract what is meant for you without chasing anything. That's the quiet power of peace. It doesn't need to shout to be heard. It just needs to be chosen over and over again. Top of 4.